It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso right here on SABC3. Now this morning, I hope, Tabzi, it's all about children and babies, and we're about to touch on an aspect that's truly important, because without knowing it, parents generally can sometimes speak and behave in ways that damage, their children's self-esteem. Self-esteem referring to the way we see ourselves, the way we feel about ourselves, and knowing our strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, it's an important conversation to have. And that's why this morning we're chatting to registered counsellor Shanaz Moose, who joins us to share some tips on how parents can help build their children's self-esteem, and obviously, especially during these times, very uncertain times like these, and how these times in particular impact our levels of self-esteem. Shanaz, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing on this cold morning?
Shanaz, oh, so good. We're surviving. We're keeping it going. And how are you doing?
I'm all snuggled up here, ready to do this. So I'm very excited. Self-esteem is such an important topic that a lot of people aren't aware, the long-term implications of self-esteem.
I actually want to start on that very point. What are the far-reaching implications of having a high or even low self-esteem?
Self-esteem has many elements built in, and one of them is the belief in your ability, capability, what you can do. So obviously, as you grow older, you try and aim for higher goals because you have a belief that you can reach it. And if you have a low self-esteem, you often just settle for what you think is your worth or the level of what you can achieve, often never reaching your full potential as a person.
And Shanaz, what are some negative emotions that are so typical of having a low self-esteem in a child? What could we see or experience in that child?
So one of the main ones often is anxiety, to be worried all the time, to be worried that you're not good enough, that you won't be included, or you won't be as good as someone else. So anxiety is the one, and often there's also depression. These kids can feel quite isolated and alone. And so those are two of the big things, to look out for. And at the end of the day, you have this negative inner voice that the child has that is always harsh and critical. And this is what, keeps them in that low frame of mood constantly.
So it manifests in different ways for different children. I just want to go, and ask about bullies. Does this fall part of, low self-esteem for them?
So often, surprisingly, the bully is the child with the low self-esteem, right? And the target of the bully is often another child with low self-esteem, because you're afraid to take on a child with high self-esteem because you may not win. You may not get the reward that you seek, which is power and dominance. So you're not going to bully someone who's popular. You're going to look for the quiet, shy child, and that's where you're going to go, because you as the bully feel empowered.
I'm tempted to say then it all falls on the parents, that the parents carry such a huge responsibility when it comes to this. Where then do parents get it wrong when it comes to trying to build their child's self-esteem?
So, I think that a lot of parents don't realize that their level of self-esteem is vital to wanting their children to have a healthy level of esteem. So, because I often actually have this experience where parents bring kids for confidence or boost in self-esteem, but they themselves struggle, when I ask them. So the parents actually are just parenting the way they were parented, and often things like comparisons of siblings, and all the things that we were raised with are actually not beneficial to, and accepting the child as they are, not longing for the child to be different or smarter or, or thinner or more focused at school. So whatever it is, just accepting the child as they are for who they are.
Being one of 4 siblings, or 7 siblings in general, it's truly frustrating for any parent for the child actually to be compared to any of your siblings. It's as though you're not really reaching that expectation from your parents, and then that responsibility, it knocks you down. It knocks you down completely. It does knock your self-esteem. But I have to ask this: can your level of self-esteem influence how you handle uncertain times, like, the COVID-19 crisis?
Yes, so I did say, these children would have a higher level anxiety and have a fearful sort of belief system about the future. So obviously with that in mind, we are now in the most scariest time most of us have ever lived in. So even people or children without anxiety are struggling and afraid. So definitely self-esteem is that, you have this belief that things will be okay and that you are okay. And a low self-esteem doesn't have the capability to factor in that what's going on is temporary. It's long. I mean, the lockdown and everything that's happened it's a long period, but it isn't forever. And a higher level of self-esteem child will actually see that this is temporary.
I love this. I love this conversation, and it's such a good one. Shanaz Moose, thank you very much once again for making the time for us. But of course, you're not going anywhere because a bit later on, Shanaz is actually going to be getting down to the nitty-gritty, the tips on how to help build your child's self-esteem. There's so much to learn, so stay with us.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back to it. It is your feel-good breakfast show. It's Expresso, live on SABC3. Now, earlier in the show, registered counsellor Shanaz Moose, she really went all the way out, helping us out to understand the far-reaching effects of having a low self-esteem, particularly in children, as well as how parents sometimes do get it wrong when trying to build their child's self-esteem. But Shanaz does join us once again to give us some professional advice on how more positively we can assist in building our children's self-esteem. Shanaz, thank you so much for staying with us. Oh, Shanaz, I think you are on mute. That is definitely the quote of 2020.
Okay.
Unmute.
Yes.
There we go.
Unmute.
Welcome back. We've got you.
It's the headset. Yes, the headset has its own mute function. So what I wanted to say was, one of the biggest mistakes that we make as parents is that we praise our kids in the hopes that we're making them feel good about themselves. But praise that isn't sincere or genuine or doesn't ring true for the child is actually an indication that I'm actually not those things. That doesn't sound like me. So praise must be quite authentic in aligned with what actually happened. If a child's been working hard on something but doesn't get an A, then you acknowledge, I see how hard you worked. I'm so proud that you put so much effort in. It's the effort and the progress that you need to praise, not the actual end result. So that's just one of the ways.
I love that so much, Shanaz, because we see so many videos of parents, playing with their children, maybe shooting a hoop, they miss, but then they run to place the hoop inside, or the ball inside the hoop, and say, congratulations, you've done it. But then it's not sincere, so it's very important to be honest and transparent with your children. What other ways can parents help their children build, a high level of self-esteem?
So the other thing is, children will mess up, they will make mistakes. It's a normal part of learning. And when you embrace mistakes that you make as a parent and that your child makes, you actually get more learning out of it. Another way is when you teach kids how to do something for the first time, you show them, you demonstrate, right? And you guide and assist. Often parents will get impatient and grab whatever it is they're trying to teach and just do it themselves because of the impatience. But if you're teaching something for the first time to a child, or even the second or third, they are still trying to achieve mastery over it. They need you to be patient with them.
As an uncle, I often say to my sister, and especially in the way that she interacts with my niece and to many of my other relatives, I say that their children do look up to them and look at them as they superheroes. And very often when, parents give up in the teaching process, it can be very, very devastating to see how disappointing, or how disappointed the parent is when, for the child when obviously the end result is just like giving up and throwing the towel. But maybe you can then tell us about how times of uncertainty, like the current pandemic, can impact people's level of self-esteem, but also the very practical tips and words of advice that we need to look to when trying to help build our children's self-esteem.
So many people have been negatively impacted during this time and lost their jobs, businesses. Kids had to learn a new way of learning. And the one thing that everyone needs to have a little bit of is compassion for themselves, self-compassion and compassion for others. Because I think the virus didn't care how much money you had or how educated you were. It wasn't looking at those types of things. So often people with self-esteem play the victim, that they've been picked or targeted, but this virus showed that everyone is just as vulnerable. And I think we need to actually build each other up as people, that everyone has within them something powerful, a strength, a gift that hasn't been tapped into. So when parents raise their kids right, they acknowledge the gift of the child, the strength of the child, and self-esteem building helps move that a skill and ability to what becomes that child's passion, their purpose, and how they make a difference in the world one day, in whatever it is. It's not going to be like the same thing for each of your own children. It'll be unique to them.
Shanaz, you have an exciting online series that you're working on, and this really, it brings a smile to my face, because really I've watched so much of your videos and so much of your teachings that every parent, I think, who really wants to get into that space would benefit greatly from this. Tell us about this, introducing a brand new series, Building Self-Esteem, the workshops that you are running. What are they all about?
Yeah, so I've been wanting to do self-esteem again for kids. I did it way back in 2015, 2016. So now I'm bringing actually teaching the parents how to build self-esteem. I used to do it actually for kids themselves. So I want children to, understand their highest level of their magnificence. And the only way to do that is to teach the parents how to build up and honor, what it is within the child. And the next 3 sessions, I'll be taking parents through building their own self-esteem, because that is equally crucial. You can't expect high self-esteem from children where you yourself have a low self-esteem. It doesn't work that way. You are the model on which they are building their sense of self. So parents first, parents first is my motto. So, yeah.
Beautiful.
It's truly always inspirational catching up with you and talking to you. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us here on the show. I hope that you have a fantastic morning further, Shanaz Moos. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Of course, you can get in touch with Shanaz and read all about her exciting project on happyconfidentme.co.za.